The morning sun crept over the horizon, casting a soft, golden light over the sprawling estate that had become Zara's world. Nestled at the edge of the city, the estate was a blend of old-world charm and modern opulence, a testament to the wealth and status of its owner, Alex Monroe. The mansion, with its towering columns and intricate ironwork, seemed almost out of place in a world that had grown accustomed to the sleek, sterile lines of modern architecture. Yet, it stood proud and dignified, much like the man who had built his empire within its walls. Zara moved silently through the vast halls of the mansion, her footsteps a mere whisper against the polished marble floors. She had learned the art of quiet efficiency during her years as a servant, a skill that had become second nature to her. Despite her delicate frame, she carried herself with an air of grace and confidence that belied her position. Her emerald eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing as she went about her tasks, ensuring that every detail was attended to with precision. Born on the distant planet Zalera, Zara was unlike any other servant in the household. Her skin, a soft hue of lavender that shimmered faintly in the light, marked her as an outsider in a world that was not her own. Her people, the Zalarens, were known for their intelligence and adaptability, traits that had made them highly sought after as diplomats, scholars, and in some cases, like Zara's, servants to the wealthy elite of Earth. Yet, despite her status, Zara possessed a quiet dignity that made it impossible to ignore her presence, even when others tried. As she passed through the grand dining room, her gaze lingered on the crystal chandeliers that hung from the ceiling, their intricate designs catching the light in a mesmerizing dance. The room, with its long mahogany table and ornate silverware, was a symbol of the wealth that surrounded her, a wealth that was as foreign to her as the planet she now called home. She had never known such luxury on Zalera, where life was simpler, more connected to nature and the community. Here, everything seemed to be a display of power and status, a constant reminder of the rigid hierarchy that defined this society. Zara's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of voices coming from the hallway. She recognized the deep, authoritative tone of Alex Monroe, her employer. He was speaking with one of his business associates, discussing some matter of importance, as he often did. Zara knew better than to eavesdrop, but she couldn't help but catch snippets of the conversation as she went about her work. The merger needs to be finalized by the end of the month, Alex was saying. We can't afford any delays, not with the competition breathing down our necks. His voice was calm, yet there was an underlying tension that Zara could sense. She had seen this side of Alex before, the side that was always in control, always focused on the next big deal. It was this drive, this relentless pursuit of success, that had made him one of the most powerful men in the city. Yet Zara couldn't help but wonder what it cost him, this constant need to stay ahead. As she continued her work, she found herself thinking more about Alex than she had before. She had always respected him, admired his intellect, and his ability to navigate the complex world of business with such ease. But lately she had begun to see something else in him, something that went beyond the polished exterior he presented to the world. There were moments when he seemed almost weary, as if the weight of his responsibilities was becoming too much to bear. It was in these moments that Zara felt a strange sense of connection to him, a recognition of a kindred spirit who, like her, was navigating a world that often felt overwhelming. Her thoughts were interrupted again, this time by the arrival of another servant, a young woman named Emily, who worked in the kitchen. Emily was one of the few people in the household who had taken the time to get to know Zara, and the two had formed a tentative friendship over the years. That morning, Emily greeted her with a smile. "You're up early, as usual." "Good morning," Zara replied, returning the smile. "There's always much to be done." Emily nodded, glancing around the room before lowering her voice. "Did you hear, Mr.? Monroe has some important guests coming tonight. I heard Mrs. Fairfax talking about it with the chef. Sounds like it's going to be a big deal." Zara's interest was piqued. While it wasn't unusual for Alex to host dinners for his business associates, something about Emily's tone suggested that this event was different. "Do you know who the guests are?" Zara asked, keeping her voice casual. Emily shook her head. "No idea. But if Mrs. Fairfax is involved, you can bet it's something important. She's been in a frenzy all morning, making sure everything is perfect." Zara nodded thoughtfully. Mrs. Fairfax, the head of the household staff, was known for her meticulous attention to detail and her insistence on perfection. If she was involved, it meant that tonight's event was indeed significant. "Thank you for letting me know. Emily, Zara said. I'll make sure everything is in order. As Emily left to return to the kitchen, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would be important. She didn't know why, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that something was about to change. Later that afternoon, as she prepared the dining room for the evening, Zara's mind wandered back to Alex. She had seen so many sides of him over the years, the determined businessman, the generous employer, and occasionally the weary man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. But she had never seen him as anything more than her employer, a man who was so far above her in status that any other relationship seemed impossible. Yet, as she arranged the silverware with precise care, she found herself wondering if there was more to their relationship than she had realized. They had shared moments over the years, moments that had felt different, more personal. He had sought her opinion on matters, asked her questions that went beyond the usual exchanges between employer and servant, and she had answered him, not as a servant, but as an equal, offering her insights without hesitation. Could it be that he saw her as more than just a servant? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She had worked hard to maintain her position in the household, to navigate the complexities of this world without drawing too much attention to herself. The last thing she wanted was to create trouble for herself or for Alex. But even as she tried to push the thought aside, it lingered in the back of her mind, a quiet whisper that refused to be ignored. The evening arrived, and with it, the guests. Zara watched from a discreet distance as Alex greeted his visitors, a group of influential business leaders and politicians. He was charming and confident as always, moving through the room with the ease of someone who knew exactly how to command attention. Yet, as the evening wore on, Zara noticed something different about him. He seemed more reserved, his usual exuberance tempered by a quiet intensity. It wasn't until later, after the guests had left and the mansion had returned to its usual quiet state, that Zara saw him again. She was in the library, tidying up after the evening's events, when he entered the room. He didn't notice her at first, his mind clearly elsewhere, as he walked to the window and looked out at the darkened grounds. Zara hesitated, unsure whether she should make her presence known. But something in his posture, the way his shoulders sagged slightly, the way he seemed lost in thought, compelled her to speak. "Mr. Monroe," she said softly. He turned, surprised to see her there. For a moment he didn't say anything, just looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Then, he smiled, a tired but genuine smile that softened the sharp lines of his face. "Zara," he said, his voice warm. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I was just finishing up," she replied, gesturing to the stack of books she had been organizing. "Is there anything else you need?" He shook his head, then hesitated, as if considering something. "Actually, yes. I could use someone to talk to. It's been a long day." Zara felt her heart skip a beat. She had never seen Alex like this, so vulnerable, so human. She nodded, setting the books aside and moving closer. "I'm here," she said simply. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You've been with me for a long time, Zara, longer than most of the staff. I've always admired how you handle things around here. You're different. In a good way." Zara felt a flush of warmth at his words, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thank you, Mr. Monroe. I've always tried to do my best." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "I know, and that's why I feel I can talk to you. It's been getting harder lately, keeping up with everything. The business, the expectations. It's exhausting." Zara nodded, understanding more than he knew. "I can imagine. It must be difficult, having so much responsibility." "It is," he admitted, his voice quieter now. "And sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it. If I'm doing the right thing, or if I'm just running in circles." Zara's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. She wanted to comfort him, to tell him that everything would be okay, but she knew that wasn't what he needed. Instead, she offered him something else: honesty. "From what I've seen, Mr. Monroe, you care about what you do. You're passionate, driven. But maybe it's okay to take a step back sometimes, to remember why you started all this in the first place." He looked at her, a spark of something hope, perhaps in his eyes. "You're right. I think I've lost sight of that. I've been so focused on staying ahead, on making sure everything is perfect, that I've forgotten why I'm doing it." Zara nodded, feeling a connection between them that she hadn't felt before. It's easy to get lost in the details, to forget the bigger picture. But you have the power to change that, to find a balance. Alex smiled again, this time with a touch of admiration. You're wise, Zara, wiser than most people I know. Thank you for that. She smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her at his words. I'm glad I could help. For a moment, they just stood there, in the quiet of the library, two souls who had found an unexpected connection in a world that often felt too big, too overwhelming. It was a moment that neither of them would forget, a moment that marked the beginning of something new, something that neither of them could yet define. As Zara left the library that night, she couldn't help but feel that something had shifted between them. She didn't know what it meant or where it would lead, but she knew one thing for certain: the world she had known was changing, and with it, so was she. And so was Alex Monroe. The air was thick with the scent of summer rain, a lingering reminder of the storm that had passed through earlier that day. Outside, the garden glistened under the pale light of a waning moon, its flowers and foliage bathed in a silvery glow. The world had a hushed, almost magical quality to it, as if the storm had washed away not only the dust and grime of the city, but also the tensions that often lingered within the walls of the Monroe estate. Zara stood by one of the tall windows in the sitting room, her slender fingers lightly brushing the glass as she gazed out at the tranquil scene. It was late, far later than she usually stayed up, but something had kept her from retreating to her quarters that night. A restlessness, perhaps, or an inexplicable sense of anticipation. She had finished her duties hours ago, yet she found herself unable to sleep, drawn to the quiet solitude of the empty house. She was dressed in her usual attire, a simple, elegant dress that allowed her to move freely as she worked. The deep purple fabric complemented the lavender hue of her skin, a color that was unique to her people. Zara had always preferred practicality over extravagance, and her choice of clothing reflected that. Yet, even in simplicity, there was an undeniable grace to her appearance, a quiet beauty that was often overlooked by those around her. As she stood there, lost in thought, she heard the soft creak of the door opening behind her. She turned to see Alex Monroe entering the room, his expression one of surprise at finding her there. He was dressed casually, his usually immaculate suit replaced by a simple shirt and trousers, the first few buttons undone at the collar. His hair, normally styled with precision, was slightly tousled, giving him a more relaxed, almost boyish appearance. "Zara," he said, his voice low and warm, "I didn't expect to find you here." Zara offered him a small smile. "I could say the same, Mr. Monroe. It's quite late." Alex chuckled softly, moving further into the room. "It is, isn't it? But I couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind, I suppose." He walked over to the sideboard and poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light as it swirled in the crystal glass. He took a sip, savoring the warmth as it spread through him, before turning his attention back to Zara. "And you? What keeps you up at this hour?" Zara hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to answer. She had always been careful to maintain the appropriate distance between them, never overstepping the boundaries of her role. But there was something in his demeanor tonight, a sense of openness, that made her feel safe to speak more freely. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I suppose. I just needed some quiet time to think." Alex nodded, as if understanding perfectly. "The house can feel a bit overwhelming at times, can't it? All the noise, the people. Sometimes it's nice to just escape for a while." Zara couldn't help but agree. The Monroe estate was a grand place, full of life and activity, but it could also be suffocating in its grandeur. There were days when she longed for the simplicity of her home planet, where life was slower, more connected to the rhythms of nature. Alex walked over to the window where Zara stood, his presence close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. He looked out at the garden, his gaze thoughtful. "I used to come here as a child," he said quietly. "This was my parents' estate before it became mine. I remember spending hours in that garden, pretending I was a knight, or an explorer discovering new worlds." Zara turned her head slightly, studying his profile. There was a softness in his expression that she hadn't seen before, a hint of nostalgia that made him seem more human, more real. "It must have been a wonderful place to grow up," Zara said, her voice gentle. "It was," Alex agreed. "But it was also lonely. My parents were always busy, always away on business. I was raised more by the staff than by them." I suppose that's why I spent so much time lost in my imagination. He took another sip of his whiskey, his eyes still on the garden. I always knew I would inherit the estate one day, but I never imagined it would come with so much responsibility. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really cut out for all of this. Zara listened in silence, sensing that Alex needed to unburden himself. She had never seen this side of him before, the side that wasn't the confident, commanding businessman. Here, in the quiet of the night, he was just a man who carried the weight of expectations, who grappled with doubts and fears like anyone else. I think you underestimate yourself, Zara said softly. You've accomplished so much, built a successful company, and earned the respect of so many people. That's not something everyone can do. Alex turned to look at her, his expression one of gratitude. Thank you, Zara. That means a lot coming from you. She met his gaze, feeling a connection between them that went beyond words. It was as if, in that moment, they were no longer employer and servant, but simply two people who understood each other in a way that others couldn't. Alex sighed, setting his glass down on the windowsill. I suppose I've just been feeling the pressure more lately. The business world is ruthless, and there's always someone waiting to take your place the moment you slip up. It's exhausting, trying to stay ahead all the time. Zara nodded, empathizing with his plight. She had seen firsthand the toll that his work took on him, the late nights, the endless meetings, the constant need to prove himself. It was a life she couldn't fully comprehend, but she understood the weariness that came with it. Have you ever thought about stepping back, she asked gently, taking a break, even if just for a little while? Alex shook his head, a rueful smile on his lips. I wish I could, but I can't afford to. There's too much at stake, too many people depending on me. If I step back even for a moment, everything I've worked for could fall apart. Zara frowned, her brow furrowing in concern. But what about you, your health, your happiness? Those things matter too. He looked at her, his eyes searching hers as if trying to find something he had lost. You're right, he said after a long pause. But it's hard to know where to draw the line. I've always been driven, always pushed myself to be the best. It's how I was raised, how I was taught to succeed. But lately I've been questioning if it's worth it. Zara reached out, her hand resting lightly on his arm. It was a bold move, one that she wouldn't have dared under normal circumstances, but something about this moment felt different, more intimate. Maybe it's time to redefine what success means to you, she suggested. It doesn't have to be about being the best or having the most. Maybe it's about finding balance, about making time for the things that truly matter. Alex looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her, his eyes softening. How did you get to be so wise, Zara? She smiled, a hint of playfulness in her eyes. I've had a lot of time to think, Mr. Monroe, and I've seen enough to know that sometimes the most important things in life aren't the ones we can measure with money or status. He chuckled, the sound low and warm. You're right, as usual. I suppose I just needed someone to remind me of that. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation settling between them. It was a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled with words. Zara could feel the tension in Alex's posture slowly easing, as if their conversation had lifted a burden from his shoulders. Thank you, Zara, Alex said quietly. I didn't realize how much I needed to talk until now. You've always been a good listener, but tonight, I feel like I've actually been heard. Zara's heart swelled with a mix of emotions, gratitude, affection, and something deeper that she didn't dare name. I'm glad I could be here for you, she replied softly. Alex took a step closer, his gaze locked on hers. For a moment, Zara felt her breath catch in her throat, the air between them charged with an unspoken tension. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between what was proper and what he truly wanted. But before either of them could act on whatever was simmering beneath the surface, Alex took a step back, breaking the spell. He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost embarrassed. I should probably get some rest, he said, his tone more formal now. It's been a long day, and I'm sure you have things to attend to as well. Zara nodded, her heart still pounding from the intensity of the moment. Of course, Mr. Monroe. I'll see you tomorrow. He gave her a small, almost reluctant smile. Good night, Zara. Good night, Mr. Monroe, she replied, watching as he turned and left the room, his footsteps fading into the distance. As soon as he was gone, Zara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm the rapid beat of her heart. What had just happened? It had felt like something significant, something that had shifted the dynamic between them in a way she hadn't anticipated. She knew she needed to be careful. Whatever connection they had just forged was dangerous, a threat to the careful balance she had maintained in her life. But even as she told herself this, she couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there was something more between them. Zara turned back to the window, her thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. Outside, the rain had started again, a gentle patter against the glass that mirrored the rhythm of her heartbeat. She watched as the raindrops traced delicate patterns down the pane, her mind replaying the conversation she had just had with Alex. In that moment, Zara realized that her feelings for him had grown deeper than she had ever allowed herself to acknowledge. It wasn't just admiration or respect anymore. It was something more profound, more dangerous. Something that made her want to be close to him, to offer him the comfort and support he so desperately needed. But she also knew the risks. She was an alien, a servant, and he was one of the most powerful men in the city. A relationship between them would be seen as scandalous, if not outright forbidden. And yet, despite the obstacles, despite the fear that gripped her heart, Zara couldn't deny the bond that had formed between them. As she stood there, lost in thought, she made a silent vow to herself. Whatever happened, she would be there for Alex, as a confidant, as a friend, and perhaps, if fate allowed, as something more. But for now, she would take things one day at a time, navigating the delicate balance of their relationship with the same grace and wisdom she had always relied on. And with that resolve, Zara finally turned away from the window, her thoughts still swirling but her heart a little lighter. She had taken a step into uncharted territory tonight, but she wasn't afraid. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging that went beyond her role as a servant. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and uncertainties, but she also knew that she wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. The next morning had started like any other. The sun rose over the city, casting a warm, amber light through the large windows of the Monroe estate. Zara was in the kitchen, going over the day's tasks with Emily, when she received an unexpected request. Mrs. Fairfax, the head of the household staff, approached her with a brisk, no-nonsense demeanor, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Zara, she began, her tone as formal as ever, Mr. Monroe has asked for your assistance in his study. It seems he needs help with some paperwork. Zara blinked in surprise. While she had assisted Alex with various tasks before, it was unusual for him to request her presence so directly. Of course, Mrs. Fairfax, she replied, keeping her voice steady. I'll attend to it right away. Mrs. Fairfax nodded, her expression inscrutable. See to it that everything is in order, Mr. Monroe has an important meeting later, and he'll need all the documents prepared. Zara inclined her head respectfully. I will. As she made her way to Alex's study, Zara couldn't help but wonder why he had specifically asked for her. The thought sent a nervous thrill through her, a mixture of excitement and trepidation. When she reached the door to the study, she paused for a moment, taking a deep breath before knocking softly. Come in, Alex's voice called from the other side. Zara pushed the door open and stepped inside, her eyes immediately drawn to Alex, who was seated at his desk, surrounded by stacks of papers. He looked up as she entered, a smile spreading across his face when he saw her. Ah, Zara, thank you for coming, he said, standing to greet her. I'm afraid I'm in a bit of a bind. I've got this meeting with the board later today, and there's a mountain of paperwork that needs to be organized. I could use an extra pair of hands. Zara returned his smile, feeling a warm flush spread across her cheeks. I'm happy to help, Mr. Monroe. Just tell me what needs to be done. He gestured to the piles of documents on his desk. These are the reports that need to be reviewed and summarized. I've already gone through most of them, but I'm running out of time. If you could help me with the summaries, it would be a great relief. Zara nodded, moving to the desk and picking up one of the reports. As she began to read, she was struck by the complexity of the material. It was clear that these documents were related to a major business deal, one that would have significant implications for Alex's company. Are these related to the merger you mentioned the other day? Zara asked, her tone curious. Alex looked at her in surprise, impressed by her memory. Yes, they are. The board is meeting today to finalize the terms, and I need to make sure everything is in order. It's a big deal, one that could determine the future direction of the company. Zara nodded thoughtfully as she continued reading. It seems like a complicated situation. There are a lot of moving parts. Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. That's putting it mildly. The merger could be a game changer, but it's also incredibly risky. If anything goes wrong, it could cost us dearly. Zara paused in her reading, looking up at him. What do you think? Is it worth the risk? He hesitated for a moment, his gaze meeting hers. Honestly, I'm not sure. On paper, it seems like a good move, but my gut tells me there's more to it than what we're seeing. But the board is eager, and the pressure is on to make a decision. Zara studied him for a moment, her expression serious. Then maybe you should trust your instincts. You've built this company from the ground up. You know better than anyone what's best for it. Alex smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. You always know the right thing to say, Zara. I've been so caught up in the details that I've forgotten to trust my own judgment. Thank you for reminding me. She returned his smile, feeling a flutter of warmth in her chest. I'm just here to help. For the next few hours, they worked side by side, sorting through the documents, summarizing reports, and discussing the various aspects of the merger. It was a task that required focus and precision, yet Zara found herself enjoying the challenge. She had always been quick to learn, and as they worked, she absorbed the details of the business, offering her insights when appropriate. Alex, for his part, found himself increasingly impressed by Zara's ability to grasp the intricacies of the situation. Her questions were insightful, her suggestions thoughtful. He had always known she was intelligent, but seeing her apply that intelligence to his business was something else entirely. It made him realize just how much he valued her opinion, how much he trusted her judgment. As the day wore on, the pile of documents slowly diminished, and with it, the tension that had been building in Alex's shoulders. By the time they were nearly finished, the atmosphere in the study had shifted. What had started as a daunting task had turned into something almost enjoyable, a collaboration that felt natural, effortless. It was during a brief lull in their work, as they both reached for the last of the reports, that their hands brushed against each other. The contact was fleeting, but it sent a jolt through both of them, a spark that neither could ignore. Zara quickly pulled her hand back, her heart racing, while Alex froze, his gaze locking onto hers. For a moment, the air between them was charged with an intensity that neither of them could deny. It was as if time had slowed, the world outside the study fading into the background, leaving just the two of them, standing on the precipice of something unknown. Zara felt her breath catch in her throat as she met his gaze, her mind racing. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the same conflict that had been simmering within her since that night in the sitting room. It was a mixture of longing and fear, of desire and hesitation. Zara, Alex began, his voice soft, almost hesitant. But before he could say anything more, the door to the study swung open, and Mrs. Fairfax entered, her expression as stern and no-nonsense as ever. Mr. Monroe, the board members have arrived, she announced, oblivious to the tension in the room. They're waiting for you in the conference room. The spell was broken. Alex blinked, his attention snapping back to the present. He nodded to Mrs. Fairfax, his demeanor shifting back to the composed businessman she was accustomed to seeing. Thank you, Mrs. Fairfax. I'll be right there, he said, his voice steady. Mrs. Fairfax nodded curtly and left the room, leaving Zara and Alex alone once more. But the moment had passed, and with it, the charged atmosphere that had enveloped them. Alex turned to Zara, his expression unreadable. Thank you for your help today, Zara. I couldn't have done this without you. Zara forced a smile, pushing aside the swirl of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. It was my pleasure, Mr. Monroe. I'm glad I could assist. He hesitated for a moment, as if there was something more he wanted to say, but then he simply nodded and turned to gather the reports. I should go. The meeting won't wait. Zara stepped back, giving him space. Of course. Good luck with the meeting. He paused at the door, glancing back at her. Zara, if you're free later, I'd like to talk. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Her heart skipped a beat at his words, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'll be here, Mr. Monroe." He gave her a small, almost reluctant smile before turning and leaving the room, the door closing softly behind him. Zara stood there for a moment, the silence of the study pressing in around her. She felt as if she was standing on the edge of a precipice, the ground beneath her feet shifting in ways she couldn't quite understand. Something had changed between them today, something that went beyond the professional relationship they had shared for so long. She knew she needed to be careful. Whatever was happening between them was dangerous, fraught with potential consequences that could upend both their lives. But even as she told herself this, she couldn't deny the thrill that coursed through her, the excitement of stepping into uncharted territory. With a sigh, Zara turned back to the desk, her thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. She still had work to do, tasks to complete before the day was over. But her mind kept drifting back to Alex, to the way he had looked at her, the way their hands had brushed against each other, sending sparks through her entire being. She tried to focus on the task at hand, but it was no use. Her thoughts kept returning to him, to the unspoken tension that had simmered between them all day. She could feel it growing, like a storm on the horizon, threatening to break at any moment. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. She didn't know what Alex wanted to talk to her about later, but whatever it was, she knew it would change everything. Later that evening, after the board meeting had concluded and the mansion had settled into its usual quiet, Zara found herself once again standing outside the door to Alex's study. She hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to expect, didn't know where this conversation would lead, but she knew she couldn't avoid it. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly. "Come in," Alex's voice called from inside. Zara pushed the door open and stepped into the study. Alex was seated at his desk, the reports from earlier neatly stacked to one side. He looked up as she entered, his expression warm but serious. "Zara, thank you for coming," he said, standing to greet her. She nodded, closing the door behind her. "Of course, Mr. Monroe, you wanted to talk." He gestured to the chairs in front of the desk. "Please sit." Zara did as he asked, her nerves tingling with anticipation. Alex took a seat across from her, his hands resting on the desk, as he regarded her thoughtfully. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation today," he began, his voice measured, "and about what happened between us." Zara felt her heart skip a beat, but she kept her expression calm. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I mean, the way we've been interacting lately, I've noticed a change, and I think you have too." She swallowed hard, unable to deny the truth of his words. "Yes, I've noticed." Alex leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "Zara, I've always respected you. You're intelligent, capable, and I've come to rely on you in ways I never expected. But lately, I've started to feel something more." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She could feel her pulse quicken, her mind racing as she tried to process his words. "Mr. Monroe, I..." He held up a hand, cutting her off gently. "Please, let me finish." She nodded, her heart pounding. Alex took a deep breath before continuing. "I know it's complicated. We come from different worlds, different backgrounds. But I can't ignore what I'm feeling. I care about you, Zara, more than I should, perhaps, and I don't know what to do about it." Zara felt a wave of emotions crash over her: fear, excitement, uncertainty. She had never expected him to say something like this, to confess feelings that she had barely allowed herself to acknowledge. "Mr. Monroe," Alex, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I care about you too. But it's dangerous. For both of us." He nodded, his expression pained. "I know. Believe me, I've thought about that. But I can't help how I feel. And I think you feel the same way." Zara looked down at her hands, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She did feel the same way, there was no denying that. But the risks were so great, the potential consequences so daunting. "I do," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared, Alex. I don't know what this means, or where it could lead." He reached across the desk, his hand covering hers in a gesture that was both comforting and intimate. "I'm scared too, Zara. But I don't want to ignore this. I don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. I need to know if you're willing to take this risk with me." Zara looked up at him, her heart in her throat. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability that he had shown her that night in the sitting room. He wasn't asking for an easy answer, he was asking her to step into the unknown with him, to face whatever challenges might come their way together. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Zara knew what her answer had to be. She couldn't deny the connection between them, the bond that had grown stronger with each passing day. She couldn't deny the way she felt when she was with him, the way her heart seemed to come alive in his presence. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm willing to take that risk." A look of relief washed over Alex's face, followed by a warmth that made her heart ache. "Thank you, Zara. I know this won't be easy, but I'm glad we're in this together." Zara squeezed his hand, feeling a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "So am I, Alex. So am I, Alex." They sat there in silence for a moment, their hands still joined, the weight of their decision settling between them. It was a moment of calm before the storm, a brief respite before they faced the challenges that lay ahead. But for now, in this quiet, intimate moment, they were together. And that was enough. The day had started out like any other. Zara had risen early, as she always did, and gone about her tasks with the quiet efficiency that had become her trademark. She had spent the morning in the garden, tending to the last of the summer blooms before the frost claimed them, and had then moved on to her duties inside the house. By mid-afternoon, she found herself in the drawing room, carefully arranging a bouquet of freshly cut flowers in a crystal vase. The room was bathed in the warm, golden light of the setting sun, the rich hues of the furniture and decor glowing in the soft glow. It was a peaceful moment, one that allowed her mind to wander as she worked. She thought of Alex, as she often did these days. She thought of the way he had looked at her the night they had confessed their feelings, the way his hand had felt in hers, warm and reassuring. She thought of the way he had smiled at her that morning over breakfast, a smile that had been meant only for her, even though they had been surrounded by others. And she thought of the way her heart had skipped a beat when he had told her that they would find a way to make this work, no matter what it took. But even as she cherished these memories, a sense of unease gnawed at the edges of her thoughts. They had been careful, so careful, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their secret was no longer as safe as it had once been. There had been moments when she had caught Mrs. Fairfax watching her with a curious, almost suspicious look, and she had noticed that some of the other staff had begun to treat her differently, their once friendly conversations tinged with a subtle, almost imperceptible distance. Zara was lost in these thoughts when she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up just as Alex entered the room, his expression unreadable. He was dressed in his usual tailored suit, the dark fabric contrasting sharply with the warmth of the room. But there was something in his eyes, a tension that set her on edge. "Zara," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk." She set down the flowers, her heart beginning to race. "Of course, Mr. Monroe. What's wrong?" He gestured for her to sit, taking a seat across from her. "I've just received some troubling news." Zara felt a knot form in her stomach. "What kind of news?" Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It seems that our relationship hasn't gone entirely unnoticed. There are rumors circulating among the staff, and it's only a matter of time before those rumors reach the wrong ears." Zara's heart sank. She had feared this moment, but hearing the words spoken aloud made it all the more real. "I see," she said quietly. "What should we do?" "I don't know yet," Alex admitted, his expression pained. "But I can't let this ruin everything we've built, Zara. I won't." She looked at him, her emotions swirling in a chaotic mix of fear, love, and determination. "Alex, I don't want to cause you any more trouble. Maybe it would be best if I left." His eyes widened in alarm. "No, Zara, absolutely not. I won't lose you over this. We'll find a way to deal with it together." "But how?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How can we possibly continue like this when everyone is watching us?" Alex reached across the small table, taking her hands in his. "We'll find a way," he repeated, his voice filled with conviction. "I don't know how yet, but we will. I'm not giving up on us." Zara looked down at their joined hands, feeling a surge of love and fear all at once. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that they could overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. But the reality of their situation loomed large, casting a shadow over the hope she desperately clung to. "I'm scared, Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know," he replied, his voice softening. "I am too. But I meant what I said, Zara. I care about you more than anything, and I'm not going to let anyone or anything take you away from me." His words were a balm to her troubled heart, but they also brought with them a fresh wave of anxiety. She knew that their relationship was more than just a personal risk, it was a risk to everything Alex had worked so hard to build. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, she couldn't imagine walking away from him, from the connection they had forged. "What are we going to do?" she asked again, her voice steadier this time. Alex squeezed her hands, his gaze unwavering. "I've been thinking about that. There's something I want to tell you, something I've been considering for a while now." Zara's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He hesitated, as if gathering his thoughts, before finally speaking. "I've been thinking about leaving the company." Zara stared at him in shock. "Leaving? But why?" "Because," he said, his voice firm, "I'm tired of living my life according to everyone else's expectations. I've spent years building this company, making sacrifices and pushing myself to the limit. And for what? To be constantly scrutinized, to be forced to hide how I really feel." Zara could hardly believe what she was hearing. Alex, the man who had built an empire with his own hands, was considering walking away from it all. But Alex, the company, it's your life's work. He nodded, a bittersweet smile on his lips. "It is, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished. But lately I started to realize that there's more to life than just business. I want something different, something more meaningful, and I want that with you." Zara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She had never expected this, never imagined that Alex would be willing to give up so much for her, for them. "Alex, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he said gently. "I know this is a lot to take in, and I don't expect you to make any decisions right now. But I wanted you to know that I'm serious about this, about us, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it work." She looked at him, her heart full to bursting with love and fear and gratitude. "Alex, I love you. But I don't want you to give up everything for me." He smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made her heart ache. "Zara, you're not asking me to give up anything. This is my choice, and I'm choosing you." She couldn't hold back the tears any longer. They spilled over, running down her cheeks as she squeezed his hands, her voice choked with emotion. "I love you too, Alex, but I'm so scared of what this could mean, for both of us." He reached up, gently wiping away her tears with his thumb. "We'll face it together," he promised. "Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together. I won't let anything come between us." Zara nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of hope and fear. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that they could find a way to make this work. But the reality of their situation was daunting, and she knew that the road ahead would be anything but easy. As they sat there, holding each other's hands in the fading light of the day, a quiet resolve settled over them both. They had made their choice, and there was no turning back. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with the same strength and determination that had brought them this far. But even as they made this silent vow to one another, they both knew that the hardest part was still to come. Their love, as powerful and real as it was, would be tested in ways they couldn't yet imagine. And they would need to draw on every ounce of courage, every bit of trust and faith in each other, to overcome the obstacles that awaited them. For now, though, they allowed themselves this moment of peace, this brief respite before the storm. And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the sky, they held on to each other, their hearts beating as one. The next few days passed in a blur, a whirlwind of emotions and decisions as Alex and Zara began to navigate the new reality of their relationship. They had agreed to keep their plans quiet for the time being, knowing that any sudden moves could draw unwanted attention. But even as they went about their daily routines, there was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared determination to see this through, no matter the cost. Zara found herself walking a tightrope, balancing her duties as a servant with the deepening bond she shared with Alex. She was acutely aware of the eyes on her, the whispers that seemed to follow her wherever she went. Mrs. Fairfax in particular had become more watchful, her gaze sharp and assessing whenever she crossed paths with Zara. It was during one such encounter, in the early morning hours before the rest of the household had stirred, that Mrs. Fairfax finally confronted her. "Zara," she said, her tone clipped as she caught the younger woman in the hallway. "A word, if you please." Zara paused, turning to face the older woman with a calm expression, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Of course, Mrs. Fairfax. What is it?" Mrs. Fairfax looked her up and down, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I've noticed some unusual behavior from you lately. You seem to be spending a great deal of time in Mr. Monroe's company." "Indeed, Mrs. Fairfax replied, her tone laced with suspicion. "But I must remind you, Zara, that there are boundaries in this household, boundaries that must be respected." Zara felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach, but she kept her expression neutral. "I understand, Mrs. Fairfax. I assure you, I have always been mindful of my duties and responsibilities." Mrs. Fairfax studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. "See that you continue to do so," she said finally, her tone stern. "This household has a reputation to uphold, and I expect all members of the staff to conduct themselves accordingly." Zara nodded, feeling a wave of relief that the conversation had not gone any further. "Of course, Mrs. Fairfax, I will." With a curt nod, Mrs. Fairfax turned and walked away, leaving Zara standing alone in the hallway, her heart racing. She had known this moment would come, had anticipated it ever since she and Alex had confessed their feelings. But even so, it shook her to realize just how precarious their situation had become. As she made her way to the kitchen to begin her morning tasks, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The rumors were spreading, and it was only a matter of time before someone else took notice, someone with the power to do real damage. That evening, as the household settled into its usual routine, Zara found herself once again standing outside the door to Alex's study. She knew they needed to talk, needed to figure out their next steps before it was too late. She knocked softly, her heart in her throat. "Come in," Alex's voice called from inside. Zara pushed the door open and stepped inside, her eyes immediately meeting his. He was seated at his desk, the warm light of the lamp casting shadows across his face. But there was a tension in his posture, a weariness in his expression that made her heart ache. "Zara," he said, his voice softening as he saw her, "I'm glad you're here." She closed the door behind her, moving to stand by his side. "Alex, we need to talk. Mrs. Fairfax spoke to me today. She's suspicious." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I was afraid of that. It's only a matter of time before the rumors reach the wrong ears." Zara nodded, her mind racing. "What are we going to do? We can't keep this up much longer." "I know," he said, his voice heavy with frustration. "I've been thinking about it all day, and I think it's time to make a decision." She looked at him, her heart pounding. What kind of decision? He met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear. "We can't keep living like this, Zara. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to anyone else. I think it's time for me to leave the company." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had known this was coming, but hearing him say it aloud made it all the more real. "Are you sure, Alex? That's a huge decision." He nodded, his expression resolute. "I've thought about it long and hard. I don't want to live my life according to everyone else's expectations anymore. I want to live it on my own terms, with you by my side." Her heart swelled with love and fear all at once. "Alex, I love you, but I don't want you to give up everything for me." He reached out, taking her hands in his. "Zara, this isn't just about you. It's about me too. I've been feeling trapped, suffocated by the demands of this life. I need a change, and I want that change to include you." Tears welled up in her eyes, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "I love you too, Alex, more than anything, but I'm so scared of what this could mean." He squeezed her hands, his gaze unwavering. "We'll face it together. Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." Zara nodded, her heart aching with a mixture of hope and fear. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They sat there in silence for a moment, their hands joined, the weight of their decisions settling between them. It was a moment of calm before the storm, a brief respite before they faced the challenges that lay ahead. But for now they held on to each other, knowing that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The following morning dawned cold and clear, the first frost of the season covering the ground in a delicate layer of white. The estate was quiet, the stillness of the early morning broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. It was the kind of morning that Zara usually loved, a time of quiet reflection before the day's demands took hold. But today there was no peace to be found in the stillness. Today everything had changed. Zara had spent the night tossing and turning, her mind racing with thoughts of the future, of the decision they had made. She knew it was the right choice, the only choice, but that didn't make it any easier. The fear of what was to come, of the challenges they would face, weighed heavily on her heart. She rose early, as she always did, and went about her tasks with a sense of purpose that belied the turmoil she felt inside. She knew that today would be the day they began to put their plan into motion, the day they took the first step toward a new life together. As she worked, she kept an ear out for any sign of Alex, knowing that he would be preparing for the same momentous day. She didn't have to wait long. Just as she was finishing her tasks in the kitchen, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching, followed by a familiar voice. Zara, Alex called softly, his voice carrying through the quiet house. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression serious but calm. He was dressed in a simple, yet elegant outfit, the kind he often wore when he wasn't in the office. But there was something different about him today, a sense of resolve that made her heart ache with both pride and fear. "Are you ready?" he asked, his gaze searching hers. Zara nodded, her voice steady despite the emotion swirling inside her. "Yes, I'm ready." He smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made her heart flutter. "Then let's do this." Together they left the kitchen and made their way to the study, where they would begin the process of disentangling Alex from the company he had built. It was a daunting task, one that would take time and careful planning, but they were both determined to see it through. As they worked, Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness, a bittersweet acknowledgement of the life they were leaving behind. The company had been Alex's passion, his life's work, and now he was walking away from it all for her, for them. It was a sacrifice that she didn't take lightly, and one that filled her with both gratitude and guilt. But as the hours passed, and they made progress on the necessary steps, that sadness began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of hope. They were forging a new path, one that they would walk together, hand in hand. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Zara knew that this was the right choice, the only choice. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the study, they had made significant progress. The first steps had been taken, and the wheels were in motion for Alex to begin the process of stepping down from the company. It was a daunting task, but one that they were ready to face together. As they sat back, exhausted but satisfied with the day's work, Alex turned to Zara, his expression softening. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I couldn't have done this without you." Zara smiled, her heart swelling with love for the man who had given up so much for her. "I'll always be here for you, Alex, no matter what." He reached out, taking her hand in his and squeezing it gently. "And I'll always be here for you, Zara. Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." In that moment, as they sat together in the fading light, Zara knew that they had made the right choice. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but they had each other, and that was all that mattered. As the first stars began to twinkle in the night sky, they sat in silence, their hands joined, their hearts beating as one. It was a moment of calm before the storm, a brief respite before they faced the challenges that lay ahead. But for now, they allowed themselves this moment of peace, knowing that whatever happened next, they would face it together with love, courage, and determination. And as the night deepened, and the world outside grew quiet, Zara found herself filled with a sense of hope, a belief that they could overcome whatever obstacles came their way. For they had made their choice, and they were ready to face the future, hand in hand. The morning broke with a somber stillness that seemed to echo the gravity of the decisions made the night before. A thin layer of frost covered the ground, turning the garden into a sparkling landscape of silver and white. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of smoke from the fireplaces that had been stoked early to ward off the morning chill. Inside the Monroe estate, the atmosphere was subdued, as if the very walls were aware of the turmoil brewing within. Zara awoke before dawn, her heart heavy with the weight of the choices she and Alex had made, the gravity of their decision to move forward together, to forge a path that defied societal expectations and risked everything they had known, had settled over her like a thick fog. Yet beneath that weight, there was a glimmer of hope, a sense of purpose that she clung to as she dressed and prepared for the day. She moved through the quiet corridors of the mansion with the practiced grace of someone who had spent years navigating the spaces of the wealthy and powerful without being seen. Her lavender skin, unique to her Zalaran heritage, shimmered faintly in the dim light, a subtle reminder of her alien origins in a world where she was always seen as different, as other. But today she carried herself with a quiet determination, her mind focused on the tasks ahead. As she made her way to the kitchen to begin her morning duties, Zara was acutely aware of the eyes that seemed to follow her. The staff had always been a close-knit group, and rumors spread quickly among them. She knew that her relationship with Alex had not gone unnoticed, despite their best efforts to keep it hidden. The furtive glances, the hushed whispers, and the sudden silences that fell whenever she entered a room all spoke of the growing suspicion among the household. But Zara had no time to dwell on their scrutiny. Today was a turning point, a day when she and Alex would begin to put their plans into action. The thought filled her with a mixture of fear and excitement, emotions that churned in her chest like a storm ready to break. She busied herself with her usual tasks, trying to keep her mind focused on the mundane details of her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Alex and the uncertain future they faced. She had just finished preparing breakfast when Mrs. Fairfax entered the kitchen, her expression as stern as ever. The older woman had always been a formidable presence in the household, her authority unquestioned by the staff. But today, Zara could sense something different in her demeanor, a sharpness in her gaze that made her stomach twist with unease. "Zara, Mrs. Fairfax said, her voice clipped, "I need to speak with you." Zara turned to face her, keeping her expression neutral despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "Of course, Mrs. Fairfax, what is it?" The older woman's eyes narrowed slightly, her tone laced with suspicion. "There have been rumors circulating among the staff. Rumors about you and Mr. Monroe." Zara's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Rumors? I'm not sure what you mean." "Mrs. Fairfax took a step closer, her gaze piercing. "Don't play coy with me, Zara. You know exactly what I mean. You've been spending an unusual amount of time with Mr. Monroe, and it hasn't gone unnoticed." Zara swallowed hard, choosing her words carefully. "Mr. Monroe has asked for my assistance with some personal matters, that is all." Mrs. Fairfax's eyes bore into her, searching for any sign of deception. "And what kind of personal matters might those be?" Zara hesitated, knowing that the truth would only confirm the older woman's suspicions. "He has been under a great deal of stress lately, and I have been helping him manage it. Nothing more." Mrs. Fairfax studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her response. Finally she spoke, her voice low and dangerous. "You would do well to remember your place, Zara. You are a servant in this household, nothing more. Mr. Monroe may have his reasons for seeking your counsel, but that does not change the fact that there are boundaries you must not cross." Zara met her gaze steadily, refusing to let the older woman intimidate her. "I understand, Mrs. Fairfax. I have always been mindful of my duties and my responsibilities. See that you continue to be Mrs. Fairfax replied, her tone cold. "This household has a reputation to uphold, and I will not allow it to be tarnished by scandal." With that, she turned and left the kitchen, leaving Zara standing alone, her heart pounding in her chest. The encounter had shaken her more than she cared to admit, and she knew that Mrs. Fairfax's words were not just a warning but a threat. The older woman's suspicions had been confirmed, and it was only a matter of time before the situation escalated. Zara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She knew that she needed to be careful, that any misstep could jeopardize everything she and Alex had worked for. But she also knew that they couldn't afford to wait any longer. The time for secrecy was running out, and they needed to act before it was too late. Later that morning, Zara found herself standing outside the door to Alex's study, her heart heavy with the weight of the conversation she knew they needed to have. She knocked softly, her hand trembling slightly as she waited for his response. "Come in," Alex's voice called from inside. Zara pushed the door open and stepped into the study, her eyes immediately meeting his. He was seated at his desk, his expression serious but calm. The tension in his posture told her that he had been waiting for this moment as much as she had. "Zara," he said, his voice softening as he saw her. "I'm glad you're here." She closed the door behind her, moving to stand by his side. "We need to talk, Alex. Mrs. Fairfax spoke to me this morning. She knows." Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. "I was afraid of that. It's only a matter of time before the rumors reach the wrong ears." Zara nodded, her mind racing. "We can't keep this up much longer. We need to do something before it's too late." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear. "I know. I've been thinking about it all morning, and I think it's time to put our plan into action." She felt a surge of both relief and anxiety at his words. They had been preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, the reality of what they were about to do hit her like a cold wave. "Are you sure, Alex? This is a big step." He nodded, his expression resolute. "I'm sure. We can't keep living like this, Zara. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to anyone else. I've made up my mind. I'm going to announce my resignation at the board meeting tomorrow." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had known this was coming, but hearing him say it aloud made it all the more real. "Alex, are you really ready to do this?" He reached out, taking her hands in his. "I am. I've thought about it long and hard, and I know this is the right choice. I don't want to live my life according to everyone else's expectations anymore. I want to live it on my own terms, with you by my side." Tears welled up in her eyes, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "I love you, Alex, but I'm so scared of what this could mean." He squeezed her hands, his gaze unwavering. "We'll face it together, Zara. Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together." She nodded, her heart aching with a mixture of hope and fear. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They sat there in silence for a moment, their hands joined, the weight of their decision settling between them. It was a moment of calm before the storm, a brief respite before they faced the challenges that lay ahead. But for now they held on to each other, knowing that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The following day dawned gray and overcast, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened rain. The atmosphere inside the Monroe estate was tense, the usual hum of activity muted by the anticipation of the announcement that Alex was about to make. The staff went about their duties with a sense of foreboding, aware that something momentous was about to occur, but unsure of what it would mean for them. Zara awoke early, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Today was the day that everything would change, the day that Alex would take the first step toward leaving behind the life he had built. It was a decision that filled her with both pride and guilt, knowing that he was doing it for her, for them. But it was also a decision that she knew was necessary, a step they had to take if they were to have any chance at a future together. As she dressed and prepared for the day, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a tightrope, one that could snap at any moment. The rumors that had been swirling around the household had grown louder, and she could sense the growing suspicion among the staff. Mrs. Fairfax had been watching her more closely than ever, her sharp gaze tracking Zara's every move, as if waiting for her to slip up. But Zara had no intention of slipping up. She had resolved to stay strong, to support Alex in whatever way she could, and to face whatever challenges came their way with courage and determination. She had just finished her morning tasks when she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She turned to find Alex standing in the doorway, his expression serious but calm. He was dressed in a dark suit, the kind he always wore to board meetings, but there was something different about him today, a sense of resolve that made her heart ache with both pride and fear. "Zara," he said, his voice softening as he saw her, "it's time." She nodded, her heart in her throat. "Are you ready?" He smiled, a small, sad smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be." They left the kitchen together, making their way to the study where the board members would be gathering. The walk through the corridors of the estate felt like a march toward the inevitable, each step bringing them closer to the moment that would change everything. When they reached the study, Alex paused, turning to face her. "I want you to be there with me," he said quietly, "when I make the announcement." Zara's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you sure? What if?" "I'm sure," he interrupted gently. "You've been by my side through all of this, and I want you there when I take this step." She hesitated, her heart pounding with fear and uncertainty, but she knew that she couldn't let him face this alone. "Okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'll be there." He smiled, his eyes softening with gratitude. "Thank you, Zara." With that, he opened the door to the study and led her inside. The room was already filled with the board members, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern as they watched Alex enter. The tension in the air was palpable, the silence heavy with anticipation. Alex walked to the front of the room, Zara by his side, and turned to face the gathered executives. He took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he prepared to speak. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I've called this meeting to make an important announcement. As many of you know, I've been considering my future with the company for some time now, and I've come to a decision." The room was deathly quiet, all eyes fixed on Alex as he continued. "Effective immediately, I will be stepping down as CEO of Monroe Enterprises." There was an audible gasp from the assembled board members, followed by a flurry of whispered conversations. Zara could see the shock and disbelief on their faces, the realization that their leader, the man who had built the company from the ground up, was leaving them. Alex held up a hand, silencing the murmurs. "I know this may come as a surprise to many of you, but it's a decision I've made after careful consideration. I've spent years building this company, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But it's time for me to move on, to focus on other aspects of my life." His gaze flickered to Zara for a brief moment before returning to the board members. "I've chosen to take a step back and allow new leadership to guide the company into the future. I have full confidence in the team we've built, and I believe they will continue to drive Monroe Enterprises to new heights." The room remained silent, the weight of Alex's words hanging in the air. Zara could feel the tension radiating from the board members, the shock and uncertainty that came with such a sudden and unexpected announcement. But Alex remained calm, his resolve unwavering. He had made his choice, and there was no turning back. As the meeting continued, with Alex outlining the transition plan and answering the board members' questions, Zara stood quietly by his side, her heart swelling with pride for the man she loved. He was taking a leap of faith, risking everything he had built, but he was doing it with grace and determination. When the meeting finally came to an end, the board members slowly filed out of the study, their expressions a mix of respect and concern. Alex watched them go, his shoulders heavy with the weight of the decision he had made. Once they were alone, Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with emotion. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled, a weary but genuine smile that made her heart ache. "We did it," he corrected gently. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. "Are you okay?" He nodded, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "I am. It feels liberating, in a way, like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders." Zara squeezed his hand, her heart full of love and admiration for the man standing before her. "I'm so proud of you, Alex. I know this wasn't easy." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as he buried his face in her hair. "I couldn't have done it without you, Zara. You've been my rock through all of this." She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her own. "And I'll always be here for you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." They stood there in the quiet study, holding each other as the weight of the day's events began to settle in. The road ahead was still uncertain, and they knew that the challenges they faced were far from over. But for now, in this moment, they allowed themselves to simply be together, to find comfort in each other's embrace. As the afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the room, Zara knew that they had taken the first step toward a new life together. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be filled with obstacles and uncertainty. But they had made their choice, and they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. Hand in hand, they left the study, stepping into the unknown with a sense of purpose and determination. The storm was far from over, but they knew that as long as they had each other, they could weather whatever came their way. And as they walked through the quiet corridors of the Monroe estate, Zara felt a sense of hope and resolve settle over her, a belief that they could overcome whatever obstacles lay ahead, for they had made their choice, and they were ready to face the future, together.